Welcome back to the OverChurched podcast for people who love Christ but are struggling with Christians.
Welcome back, guys. My name's Delicia.
I'm Justin.
And we are your hosts.
We are. Hostess with the most as well. Today, we wanted to kind of pick up where we left off last week. We talked about just how fear and insecurity can unhealthily drive certain church organizations and communities and the negative effect it has on people. But I wanted to kind of give us to give kind of like the antidote. Like, what's the solution? Like, how do people do a better job? How do Christians do a better job of saying, see you later? Without it feeling like this.
Well, what was the win that you want to share today?
Well, the win is I love the fact that we have friends who currently to this day identify as de-churched and over-churched, but still want a relationship with us, even though they know we're pastors. Yeah. So we had some friends visit Legacy recently. And they straight up, we've had discussions at their kitchen table where they said, like, listen, we're over it. Like, we don't
don't even pray for me.
Yeah, literally, that's been a separate conversation. He's like, bro, don't even need you praying for me. I'm good. Like, you know,
I don't even want your prayers.
And
what was funny is that we met these friends
through church. And so, but because of, just because of the realities of, like what you said, people suck sometimes, and unmet expectations, or over promising and under delivering by, Christians, and how loosely we throw that family word around. And when people are actually expecting you to treat them like family, and then you treat them like, an accessory or property or means to an end, it's disheartening for a lot of people. And a lot of people are over that consumeristic, transactional, which we've talked about, culture of church. And so my win was they came to Legacy, and a couple of things. One, they loved it, and they said, no, like, we really feel like this has been missing from our lives. But then we had a follow-up conversation some weeks later, and, my friend was just very honest and transparent about, like, man, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I loved it when I was there, but after going, come back home, kind of getting the routine of things, and it's been hard to sustain it, especially with some things that are happening in my life. And I just listened to him and heard him out. And then he sent me a text afterwards, and it's like a long-winded win, but I just wanted to kind of paint the picture. But he sent me a text afterward, and he said, hey, I appreciate you just letting me be transparent and vulnerable about where I am with God and church, and not attempting to preach or try and correct me based on your own views and stance on things. You just listened, and we were able to transition to another topic with ease. Your approach is what's lacking in the American church, and that's exactly what I and many others who have left the church need.
Wow.
Yeah, like that was huge for me, because it's like, I don't think I do it perfectly all the time. I don't think I'm, but I think us, like, between what we've seen with our, like, having friends who are still in that space. Having a church literally dedicated and designed to reach unchurched, to reach people like this. I feel like it's helped shape my view, because, 5-10 years ago, I probably would have been like, hey man, come on. But Hebrews says, don't forsake the assembling of the other brethren. And like, that's just the enemy trying to distract. Like, I would have tried to preach my way into convincing him that what he was doing was wrong, as opposed to just learning. Some people, you just need to sit with them. And
sit with them. I think that's huge, because I think that is what a lot of the de-churched and over-churched right now, I would say, is lacking is empathy. They're just lacking the empathy. They're lacking getting it, right? From receiving it from the church and leaders in the church, but just people in the church, like the community in the church. I talked to a girl recently that she left her church, and this is a church that she grew up in, that she spent her whole life. Like, they walked her through her mom's death. And like, these are people that she has looked up to as family, but she really felt called, and she was following her husband as well. They felt called to go somewhere else. They're not leaving God. But in that moment, she said the response and the everything that had happened within the situation was extremely hurtful. They weren't supportive. They were saying that this was not of God and all these things. And just to make bold statements like that after somebody who has served like their whole family,
they've given their life to this
life to place, to this place, is for you to like, she asked me like, Delicia, how is it that this, like, I'm not leaving God.
Yeah.
I'm just following him.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling conflicted and confused because I feel like they're telling me I'm not listening, God, because is it because it's not what they want?
Yeah.
It's not.
That's exactly what it is. And
so, but she's struggling. She's especially wrestling with this tension.
People that you trust and to spiritually guide you are the ones saying this. This isn't like, I just saw this on a random episode of a podcast or something. Yeah. I'm like, oh, maybe I should when your spiritual fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters tell you there's no way God would ever tell you to leave here, or that you didn't tell me that, so it can't be true.
Yeah. That
messes people up.
It hurts you.
Oh, for sure.
It hurts you. And we've dealt with that to some, some degree of the fact of that the first time we had to leave.
Yeah.
I will say that if you're wondering like, Justin, Delicia, how do you guys do this? Like, why is it that you're like this? I think it's because we have gone through it ourselves. We are just learning through the mistakes. We are gleaming from the ones ahead of us we're like, no, that could have been done better. That could have been handled better. And the conviction of Holy Spirit and really guiding us of like, is this like Jesus? Just bringing it back. Like, is this like Jesus? Because I truly believe that we were blessed early on in youth group with some amazing youth pastors who were just real. They were very real. They allowed you a part of their lives. We had youth leaders who were just real. Like, they didn't have a squeaky, perfect, clean, like lifestyle or anything like that. And that's due to us coming from a city life and urban life, of course, background. But at the same time, I feel like within all that we saw people who were real, who were cool, who were like, we could see ourselves like being like, like we admire in that way, and never kind of came at us like throwing this Bible at us type of deal or being super legalistic, but loving us through our brokenness, through our mistakes. And I think that is just one way that really helped mold us into this is who we want to be. This is because people in our lives were like this for us. This is who we want to be to others. Yeah. And we've just held on to that. And that takes a lot of like us wrestling with ourselves, us wrestling with God, and just keeping that same posture the whole time. Cause it's not easy all the time. Cause sometimes I don't know about you, but sometimes I almost feel like I'm doing it wrong at times. Like I'm like, oh, I'm not as spiritual, or I didn't give a real spiritual answer, or I didn't give enough of a like, like that's my struggle a lot of the time. But for everybody listening, is that if you have friends in your lives that you love and that you care for, and that you're just like, I just don't know, because I still believe in God's bride. Like I still believe in the church, but they don't. Still love them, like still love them, still be. And what does that look like? Is that looks like you being real with yourself and being real on this journey of like, we're supposed to be waiting with these people, like sitting and meeting them where they're at. And you can challenge them gently, but only if you actually have that relational equity within them. That guy who sent that to you, that's a close friend that we've kept in relationship now for, I think we're going on like
over a decade
now of being friends with, all because we met through organizing a church camp together. Yeah. We didn't have this whole like, oh my gosh, like we just grew with each other, and we've seen each other go through a lot of ups and downs with God. But the consistent thing that we've kept is that, hey, we love you. We're going to show up for you. Yeah. We're going to be there for you.
As best we can. Like we're not perfect. No, it's a journey.
Yeah. Like you're not, yeah, for sure. And I think that's what's missing with a lot of people is like, still show up for these people. like still love on them. Like, how are we supposed to be examples to this world if we're not even close to anybody still in the world?
Yeah.
And you're just in this little bubble.
Yeah, I agree. I think a couple of things you're having me think about as my mind was going as you were talking about that is when it comes to like, well, how do I love on people? But how do I love on people whom I no longer like consistently fellowship with or, worship with and all those things? And I think that's something that, first of all, are you even thinking about? Like, are you even thinking about, and I think you said this in the last episode, like, are you intentional with loving people that are on a different journey than you or at a different rhythm than you? That it's not always convenient to do so. I love the quote. Years ago, I heard a youth pastor say it, that he told a story. He was in a car with a pastor, and the pastor had a lot of influence, and he was honored to be driving him and stuff. And he, in that moment, started to solve the things. He's, I'm preaching at these places, I'm doing all these things, and grew this ministry and doing all these things. And the pastor's just quiet, and the youth pastor's like talking about himself a lot. I think out of trying to impress the guy, because he was impressed and he wanted to like, hey, I can relate. And the guy just listened, didn't talk much. And the youth pastor started asking questions. Finally, it's like he stopped talking about himself enough to start asking questions, which I think right there is a message for a lot of Christians is, do we stop preaching, teaching, talking to people? Do we ever just ask questions? That's something I'm trying to get better at is, am I asking questions more than I'm just trying to give answers?
Right.
And so he asked this pastor a question of like, man, what's your secret? And he goes, you young, a lot of young leaders, they get enthralled and fall in love with the idea of being shepherds and of having large flocks and reaching so many more sheep and all these things. He said, the problem is they stop smelling like sheep. And then it's funny, he said that he was saying this right as he was parking the car, and the pastor gets out of the car and he looks at him and says, never stop smelling like sheep. And he closes the door. And I always thought that was profound, because I think the problem with both pastors and leaders and just people who go to churches is you can stop smelling like sheep, and you stop smelling like sheep when you're no longer getting your hands dirty. You're no longer getting involved with the people that you claim you want to reach.
Right.
And there's this disconnect. And so my point with that is I have a passion for our friends who aren't a part of our church or people we meet who aren't a part of our church or any church, because I feel like they keep me grounded into the why of, wait, I follow Jesus so that I can learn how to love, live, and lead these types of people, right?
Right.
I can learn to love them. I can't love people I'm not around. And so I think that first thing of, when it comes to relationships and maintaining those, are you even around? You can't love people you're not around. And then secondly, I don't feel the burden of I have to save people or I feel like I just need to point them to the Savior. And sometimes pointing is just sitting, and they already know, like if you lived your life clearly enough, they know what you believe. They already know. They know what they're anticipating what you're going to say. So that's they already know, especially people, when we're talking about OverChurched, people that have grown up in church, they've heard this, they already know. They also know that the moment they stop doing what everybody else does, they're going to be ostracized.
Right.
They're not in the cool kids club anymore. You know what I mean? They're going to stop being invited to the dinners and the events and the things because whatever they're going through. So I love the challenge of how do we combat that narrative? How do we, no. You matter to us because you matter to us, not because you go to the same church. Right. I think what's ironic about the friends you're talking about, we've never gone to church with them.
No.
We've never gone to the same church. We've always gone to different churches, but for us, the relationship mattered more than the religious organization.
But I think that is so unique. And I think that that's necessary. If somebody's currently listening that is like, you are on a church staff or you attend a church, it's so vital for you to reach outside of your own church and connect with other people in other churches, like other staff members
in your city, who you have proximity to. Yeah. Because it's easy to have. Now we have these social networks. We have like, well, we follow each other on Instagram. Them. Yeah. But it's like, they're in Ohio. Yeah. Like they can't really do life with you.
Not that it's convenient for you. Yeah. But what's necessarily a sacrifice because it helps you grow, right? When you have that sacrificial love, it does something within you, stretches you outside of your comfortability to saying like, no, I care. I recently did this with somebody that we always make jokes. Like even when we're in youth ministry and we always saw them, we would always be in another state at another conference and everything else. And so I just felt so convicted of that because I was like, you know what? I need to reach out to her and we just need to get coffee and I just need to ask how she's doing and being a friend in that way, because there's no way we live in the same state and we're in the same circles. And yet I don't know, like I can't be a friend to her in that way. Yeah. And it's blessed me. Like we're total opposites, but like it's blessed me and I'm not doing it to get anything out of it. Yeah. I'm just doing it to be a friend. Yeah. Like I'm just doing it to show somebody some love and to be like, hey, I see you. Yeah. And like, maybe you don't have anybody that listens to you. Maybe you don't have anybody that's close to you or whatever, that you can call a friend that knows what you're going through, you know? It's needed. So it's so needed. But I would say that for that type of person where we grew up and when we first started in ministry, we actually had a lot, like your personality just made you immediately, like you've always been a learner. I think that you've always been a learner. You always want to grow. You always want to learn how to do better. And I think once we started ministry and you were on like full on board, you immediately didn't look within our own church. You looked all around us and you started making friends with every other leader, youth pastor, or some type of director within all the other churches around us. Like, why do you think that is? Like, what made you do something like that?
Well, one, I mean, I love YouTube. I love learning, from the best communicators, all the people around the world, but those people don't know my city. They don't know my area. Yeah. So it's like, I can listen to, at that time I think I listened to like a Robert Madu or Judah Smith, but that's like, they're in Texas and Washington. Like they can help me preach better, but they can't help me reach my city specifically because they don't know my city. So I wanted to learn from the guys that were local, that were actually had a passion for the city and the area and the county that we were in. And like, what's working for you? Like you're reaching students at the same schools that I want to reach, Yeah. Like there's thousands of kids at each middle school, high school, and you're getting a portion of them. What are you doing? So I can get the other, like the ones that aren't, you know what I mean? Like what are you doing that works local, like in our context? And I think that's the best way to learn. Yeah. Because everything else is just theoretical. It's like, oh, well,
But at that time, and maybe till now, maybe not now because there's so many resources out now that people back then we didn't have. But I think that it was just amazing because you didn't even put that onus on our senior pastor to teach you. Yeah. Like you just took it into your own hands of like, I gotta go make relationships. I gotta go learn. Yeah. And let me go figure out how that is.
Well, I think also when I would go to these other churches, I realized they didn't know each other. Like I'd be like, man, I learned this from I'm so-and-so down the street. They'd be like, who's that? And I'm like, well, how do y'all not know each other? We're in the same city. And so that's when we started Project 17. Yeah, I remember to get all the local youth pastors together once a month to just meet each other and learn from each other. Cause I do think the natural tendency for a lot of people, I don't think it's necessarily all the times out of pride. It's just ignorance and busyness. Like I just get so busy and just go so used to, especially as, you're in your community. Like I just get so used to the people that I'm with that I have to feel called to minister to, that I don't make time to learn from the other people that are doing the same thing. You know? That can be a blessing. So it was just kind of that desire of like, in reading John 17, where Jesus said, it was really the prayer of Jesus. He's like, make them one. He said, my prayer is not just for the disciples you sent me, but the ones that will come, that will follow them because of, that will follow me because of the word I've taught them. He said, make them one as you and I are one, then the world will know. Wow. And so I just think that unity is really the secret to the supernatural and unlocking like miracles and signs and wonders and for really bringing a revival to the world, it comes through unity. And so that was my passion. It was like, I just want to start something to get people united, because I feel like individually we're doing cool, but we could do so much better if we just started collaborating together and learning from each other. But so yeah, that's where it came from. I wanted to be more effective. I was like, none of us are anybody that's killing it. It's like, no, there's still thousands of people that aren't being reached. But if we work together, we could probably do it better. We could do more damage.
Right.
But I guess the worry I have, because I've seen that with pastors. So yes, there's a need for that. But then the worry I have when it comes to relationships for people that, aren't on that level, is that how many people essentially, because they don't have leaders that are missional, kingdom minded, and like what you said, your friend who I grew up in this church and now that I'm leaving, they're like demonizing me. I think if we're not careful, if we're not focused on creating unity with our brothers and sisters, we'll create cults.
Yeah.
And I think and it's funny because...
Or just isolation. You could just be in isolation.
Yeah,
you
could be in isolation yourself, which is super dangerous. But in the context of, okay, I have a community.
Right.
But it's just this community, when it comes to my faith. Not that you don't have friends at work, but when it comes to your faith walk, right? I think that there's way more cults in Christianity than we realize. Yeah. You know what I mean? I like watching these Netflix documentaries, and there's this new one I haven't got to watch yet called How to Become a Cult Leader or something like that.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy. I have to watch it. But I look at it and I think it's a lot easier than people realize. It's to become part of it.
I think you're absolutely right. I used to hear stories of this history of the biggest cults that really were crazy. But truthfully, I don't even think people realize how easy it can become within Christian church.
The behavior, cultish behavior. It's not like you all.
It's us. Kool-Aid. We all drink the Kool-Aid and hypothetically, we're, that culture.
Yeah. A cult culture. There you go.
Because if we got to bleed something.
Well, yeah. And because, right? That's okay. Let's talk about it. I want to break it down. I want to help people when it comes to how do I have healthy relationships in church?
Yeah.
Or with people who have how do I just have, as a Christian, how do I say goodbye well or see you later well? But also, how do I know if I'm being part of the problem, right? So first, let's identify these are the characters of the problem, and then let's talk about the solutions. Okay. And this is for anybody, any Christ follower or anybody that's anybody. This isn't just if I'm a pastor or whatever. Okay. So I would say the first thing is of okay, this is culty, this is cultish, is what you said, isolation. Does this, being a part of this community, cause me to reject or alienate myself or distance myself from others, from other communities? You know what I mean?
Right.
So that first red flag for me of bruh, this is not God honoring. This is not John 17. If we were going to use John 17 of what does Jesus want the church to look like? It's making them, okay.
Yeah.
One, if this church community causes me to, requires me to isolate myself from anyone who's not part of our flock.
Right.
That's cultish.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. Another one, I think, and I'm saying isolating in terms of what we talked about at last spot. If we're always criticizing how other churches are operating, right?
Or just other people, or I've heard it tons of times of my family, they do this and they do that. But that's their choice. Mm-hmm. How are you loving them? Mm-hmm. And is it, as long as it's a safe environment and it's not destructive to you in any way, why can't you still love on them? Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
You can fully pursue Jesus without abandoning your family.
And I'll be the first to say, when I first got saved, that I did that wrong. I didn't even realize that I was doing that wrong, because it was being made and told to me in the sense of you just need to be surrounded by people who believe like you and think like you, which I get. We're set apart. We know that. But the set apart doesn't mean that
you stop smelling like sheep.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's where the disconnect has happened with us, as Christians, of understanding that if you are set apart, you know that you walk in that because you have Christ inside of you, but you still have to minister to them. And I remember my family, I couldn't even at first, I couldn't even witness to them because they felt like, at first, like, what are you doing? What are you at all the time? And I really didn't do a good job of explaining it to them or even showing them like that love. I just kind of was like, I can't go with you. I can't be there. I'm at church. Sorry. Yeah. And I would just like constantly give reasons, but I wasn't showing up for them anymore. Yeah. Do you know?
Yeah. Because I think if we're not careful, I don't want anybody to misconstrue this as we're saying not to have boundaries.
Right.
Like if you have family members, friends, people that you've grown up with that could be detrimental to your walk with Jesus, absolutely set hard boundaries. We understand that. We agree with that.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to, it should always be, hey, I want to invite you to this. Like it should always be an open invitation for people to join you on your journey of growth or on your journey with Jesus, you know? And, so yeah, I definitely don't believe in like isolating, because what ended up happening eventually with your walk, you end up creating a space to where so many of your family members started to come to church because you were close enough where they could see the change happening. You weren't like this, no diss on missionaries, but you weren't like this missionary that's like completely gone and abandoned everybody to follow Jesus, which again, if that's your calling, I'm not hating on that, but I'm saying that wasn't for you. And then, so you were close enough to be able to see and follow, and you invited more people along in the journey, but you were also different enough to where people be like, oh yeah, don't offer her any alcohol. Like she doesn't drink. Like they would wash their mouth around you.
Yeah.
I don't think those are bad things. Like you should walk in rooms and be thermostats as Christians, right?
100%. 100%.
Okay. So isolation is a problem. That's the first red flag. Right. Does this church community cause me to isolate myself from people who love me, even if they're imperfect, or from other followers of Jesus, just because different denominations or different, certain things they don't, but if it caused me to isolate, that's a problem. I think the next thing that I think is a red flag when it comes to, is this like culty, not only do we isolate, but how do we treat our brothers and sisters locally, right? Mm-hmm. Like, even if it's not clearly stated, we don't affiliate with, like, even if you're not demonizing them, you said something earlier, unity isn't just spoken, it's seen.
Yeah.
Like, do they actually
do anything
collaborating with other ministries in this city? Mm-hmm. Because no church is big enough or effective enough to change a city by themselves.
Right.
Except Church of the Highlands. I'm just kidding. I'm a big fan of Pastor Chris Hodges. Like, they are changing cities. And I mean, golly. Yeah. But I also know they're not doing it alone.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, are we, not only are we not isolating, I got to use eyes now, but are we inviting other people to join us in the journey?
Yeah.
Am I at a part of a church that invites collaboration with other, so like one thing I love that we do is we started, even before we launched the church, we decided to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Was for our city. And so we collaborate with the city of Chandler and multiple other churches within the city, because we make a bigger impact. We can actually, you know what I mean? Like,
and different denominations. I
mean, we're working with Mormons. We'll work with anyone who wants to love on people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And our city is better because of it.
Yeah.
Because as one church, like, we can only do so much, but when we become a part of a bigger body, even the body, we're like, I don't know, we're fully affiliated with them, but hey, we'll figure out a way to make it work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just think that's, within the city, I think that speaks volumes. We invite others to be a part of the journey, and we want to be invited to the table to work with others.
Yeah.
Because we realize that that's a kingdom mindset.
Right.
So are you a part of a community that intentionally invites and involves other organizations? What other point would you add?
I can't think of an I.
It doesn't have to be an I. We went two in a row.
No, I think that those two things are good. I think that I don't think that those two things I think are just like, reflect on them. Just reflect on them.
Well, I got another one before we're done.
Go ahead.
How do they treat, this is IT, Intel, shout out Chandler. IT, how do they treat people who leave the church?
Yeah.
That is it. So do you have to isolate yourself to be a part of it? Do you invite people who aren't a part to be, to still partner and participate with? And then how do you treat people who leave? What happens how do they treat congregants who leave the church? Do they still pray for them? Do they speak highly of them?
How do they treat pastors?
Or I was about to get there. I was going to get there. But just the everyday congregant.
Yeah.
Because the everyday congregant, like someone who...
Sometimes you might not know that, but even as like the team lead, the director, whatever, like your team should know and be able to say, oh yeah, we threw them a party or we sent them a gift. Or, like that should be seen.
Yeah.
That should be seen into the fact that, hey, somebody did leave, but we bless them or whatever. And now don't get me wrong. We're not talking about the people who just up and leave and like peace out on you. Like those are people who were
never really involved. So you didn't know.
Yeah. So like they sent you an email and that was it. Like we're not faulting anybody for that. That's on them, not on you. But the ones that like they truly believe that they're they're following God's voice. They're saying like, hey, I love you guys, but I feel like this is what God's asking of me or my family to do next. These are the people we're talking about that have been a part of the community for so long. Like, how do you treat them? And if you're in a church and you're like, I'm observing and I'm checking out these churches and stuff, pay attention to that. Pay attention to that because that's important.
Ask people who've already left. Hey, how was it after you left?
Are they talking about the people who left or like still? And you have no idea.
In a negative way? Yeah.
You have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that matters. And
matters.
And then how do they treat or talk? So he goes ITT. How do they treat and talk about people or staff who have left?
Yeah.
Because that's a major thing. Because I don't understand why. Well, a lot of people do pay attention to this. I'll tell a story about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, it's like you can be so deep into your cult that you don't realize that. You don't think that's weird that anybody that leaves it all of a sudden is demonized and like you really never
feel like they can come back and visit?
Why is it that people who work here leave and never even come back to visit?
Why is that?
Why? Like nobody, do you not think to, like when you're like
I'll be tripping off of that. I'm like, how do you see somebody?
Why have we had so many youth pastors?
Yeah.
Like it can't be like, at what point, does it go like, is there something wrong with the church? Like, why do youth pastors not stay? Why do worship pastors not stay? Like, like they're like,
they're coming to this church.
They're
this
coming
is your home.
Yeah. Like if you have a revolving door of youth, young adult worship, like that's something about the culture. That's because they've been the closest in. Like you think but they've been the closest in. And how are they treated when they left?
And like that okay, so we're supposed to be this family.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be like if you think about a family, that's like me coming home and being like, oh, like, where did my sister go? Where did my sister go? Okay,
true story. 2 days ago, or I don't know when you guys are going to watch this, but recently, I was at the house, our family was at the house, and Delicia asked me to go run an errand. And so I left, and my youngest daughter wanted to come with me, so I brought her with me.
But doesn't say anything to any of us while we're sitting on the couch and watching a movie.
I didn't say anything. Delicia calls me, or actually my oldest daughter, one of the two, they call me like over an hour later and they're like, hey, I'm like on my way back home. And it's way over an hour later. And this family, she goes, hey, have you seen Juliana? Did you take Juliana with you? And I'm like, yeah, and we've been gone like 2 hours. Like, what do you like? Don't act like you care.
You're
like
such an exaggerator. The time just got longer and longer.
We were gone all day. We finally come back home, and they're like, "Oh, did you take Juliana with you?"
A whole day? It was an hour. It was an hour.
So me and Juliana come back the next day.
To be fair, I asked, was your mom there? I think your mom was there.
A bunch of y'all were there.
Yeah. And I was like, hey, where's Juliana? And nobody said anything. No, your mom swore she was upstairs. She swore she was upstairs. And I was
First of all, Juliana's our loudest kid. She doesn't go an hour without being heard or seen.
That's the same point that I'm talking about. When you're within the church, there is somebody missing, and there's some people like your mom, and there's some people like me that like delay. Like some people like your mom are like, no, they're still here. They're just gone. They're on vacation. They're somewhere. And then it's people like me that are like, oh, like a couple months later, like, hey, what happened to that pastor? What happened to that team leader? Like, what happened? And it's like, that's a red flag if that keeps happening to you.
Yeah,
like,
you should notice missing family members. But we should.
I got 3 kids. That really feel like 6. But
I think the main thing is, I just think that cultish thing of, if the church is always bashing everyone who leaves or that staff member, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, at some point it can't be everybody. It has. At what point are we looking inwardly? You know? And so I just think, what was the first I? If they're isolating, if they're causing you to isolate, that's scary. If there was the other I, it was really good too.
Invite.
If they're not inviting and they're not including other ministries and leaders around the city, and they think they can do it on their own, that's scary. If they treat people poorly who leave, that's bad. And if they talk poorly about people who left, like that is so sad to me, because we're like, this is 2023. Like, what are we doing? Like, we've seen the documentaries. What are you talking about? You can't just tell someone they have to stay here forever. Like, that is literally the definition of a cult. Like, you're not allowing people to leave or shaming them or guilting them into, like, think about it relationally. Like, the Christians, I think it's a reflect, like not knowing how, like holding on people to so tightly that they can't.
You're thinking you have replaced yourself of not trusting God.
Yeah.
You are God, because those are his children. Mm-hmm. You think you love them more. Mm-hmm. You think you can love them better. Mm-hmm. You think you know better for them. Yeah. No, he knows better for them. Yeah. And he knows that the direction that they're going to go. Yeah. He knows where the fact that they might be distracted right now. They might be on a detour or whatever the case might be. But also, he also knows that this is his journey with them. Yeah. And like, you can be encouraging, and you could slightly say like, hey, have you thought about, have you, did you pray about this? Like, did you get wise counsel?
Are you leaving just because you're upset? Like, which you can still leave, but let's make sure we rectify the offense. Like, if there's something, if you're hurt about something, you still deserve the time and space to leave. However, can we just make sure if there's something we've done wrong, we want to do better.
But let's coach people better on this. Let's love people better than this, like, because they deserve that. Yeah. And that's a reflection of who Jesus is. Yeah. It's a choice. Yeah. And they have a choice. Yeah. When did church become not a choice?
Dude, that's scary. If I could, man, we've literally sat with students. As pastors, as youth pastors, we've sat with students who are like, I really want to leave, but I'm scared. My every time I told, I love, like, students who love Jesus, like, and that's the part that's what saddens me about people that are OverChurched or even de-churched, because they started off fully loving Jesus. Yeah. But when they're told that can't be God, like, how am I ever going to know the voice of God is every time I think God's telling me something, if it doesn't line up with what you want me to do. Right. Now I have no confidence that I even hear God clearly. Yeah. Because the last time I thought I heard God and he told me to do something, you were like, no, that wouldn't be. And it's like, well, so now I've replaced God's voice with your voice. Wow. And that's scary. Yeah. And we've had students literally in tears with us saying, I want to leave this church, but my mom is going to be mad at me. Yeah. I don't want to let my mom down.
I don't want to let these leaders down.
These leaders are talking me out of it. You know what I mean? And and we've seen students struggling, to then,
when we've taught them and preached to them to knowing the voice of God
and doing things in faith.
Like,
that's the other thing. Like
crazy.
a lot of times someone leaving a community, a faith community, it's a leap of faith for them to trust that this is God taking them into a different, that's a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And I think that we should leave the door so open for people to come and go. Not that you don't do everything to love people well so that they're, you know what I mean, that they feel like they can grow in that space. But having that open-handed policy and culture to where people are able to take leaps of faith and then they're able to learn from experience. Was that God or was that, okay, I tried it. Nope, that wasn't God. I'm coming back home.
Right. I'm coming back home.
I want to come back home. But if you never let them leave home, that's a cult.
Yeah. That's so good.
And so that's the other T that scares me is how are we talking people out of things that God isn't talking them out of? Like, are we giving them the opportunity to grow for themselves? And I just think that those 4 characteristics, that isolation, the not inviting, the treating people poorly or talking poorly about people who do that girl you left out. She said, I'm scared if I leave, I know I'm going to lose all of my friends and family. She said, as soon as I leave, I know everybody's going to cut me off because I've seen them do it to everybody else.
And what was sad about that conversation was that she already knew because of, she just never reacted on what she saw before. Like she saw those red flags.
It's a fear tactic. If people know, like if you leave, they'll stay. Yeah. A lot of people will stay because they're like, well, this is the only family and community I've had. And I don't want to lose this. If I lose this, I'll lose everything. Like who else is going to support my kids? Who else is going to be there for me? So then they stay out of fear and pressure. And what is that?
Love.
And that's ungodly. The opposite of love is fear.
Yeah.
And Bible says perfect love casts out fear. Like Jesus hates fear.
Yeah.
Like the number one commandment in the scripture is do not fear.
Wow.
But we create cults where people are super afraid. They're afraid to voice a disagreement or something they don't agree with the pastor. They're afraid to leave because they're going to be shamed or ostracized. They stay in these mega cults out of fear.
Yeah. So we just want to challenge you guys, like that the fact that churches out there, we've met some amazing churches that have done this right. And that there's amazing pastors and leaders and that have really, truly done this right. And that this isn't like an impossible task. What we're challenging you as a listener is that don't be that.
Yeah.
Because you can make that change.
Yeah.
You can be that change. In the home that you have chosen for your church, or if you have left a church and you've just you're like, no, that's why I left. That's why I left, Delicia, Justin, like, that's why I left. Like, then I'm challenging you to really wrestle with God and finding out was that if you can find yourself to finding grace for them and seeing like, man, they just didn't know how to do it properly. They kind of just missed the mark on that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to now intentionally now that I know the flags to look for, I'm going to intentionally look for a church home that does that. So and I pray that you have that.
Give them the solution. So the opposite of isolation is community.
Community. And what have you been saying since we've
followed Jesus for yourself, not by yourself?
Yeah.
But
it's huge
in terms of, so you need community. Absolutely.
Need community.
But you also need a community that is communal and inviting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not thinking that if any church says we're the best church, that's a red flag. Because at what? Who are you comparing it to?
Right.
For me to be better, you have to be worse.
Yeah.
That's an isolating mindset.
Right.
Like we 100%. Are not, athletes. We're not in competition.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be a body.
Yeah.
So
we're hand in hand with you.
We're supposed to be hand in hand with the brothers and sisters. Yeah. And if we actually do something better than them, we should be intentional about building relationship, not to fix them, but to, hey, let them see on their own. And if it's something they want, you know what I mean? Like
the humility,
like
the conference we just went to, like Highlands, where we shouted out, like they give you all the resources
and they don't tell you have to change anything. They just say, this is what we do. And you can see how it works.
Yeah. And you can make it your own. Yes. You could do it. And it's like, we want to be that. Yeah. Like we want to be like,
the body.
If you're coming and being like, dang, they do that better. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go find out like how they do that.
Yeah.
And then we should be the body of, oh yeah, like you want to know? Here it is.
Yeah.
Like here's all of it. Yeah. Ask me whatever you want to ask me. We'll give it to you. We're here to serve you.
Yes. Not to serve our egos.
Yeah.
True story. I can't make this stuff up, man. Oh my gosh.
I told you, got stories for days, man.
Recently had a pastor reach out. There's a pastor operating from this cultish mindset. And this is the evidence of it. He reached out to another pastor who we know and said, hey, listen to my sermon. It can help you in some blind spots that you have. They have no relationship.
Yeah.
He's never met this other pastor. He just observes him from social media and says, well, listen to me preach. This can help you in some blind spots. That is the most narcissistic, crazy thing I've ever seen. But it was normal to him because he's been operating in this mindset.
Yeah.
And so I think the opportunity, if you really love someone, like I wouldn't be like, hey girl, your hair is whack. Come to me, I'll fix everything. Like that makes you feel worse as an individual, as opposed to if you were to ask, or if you say, oh my gosh, I love your hair. Have you ever, you like, you know what I mean? Like building the relationship to invite someone, like that's totally different. So making sure you're part of a community that's invitational, right. And then that's collaborative, right? Like are they working within the community? Are they trying to is it just everything is about them and we do this to help get more people into our church? Or are they trying to just, how do we be a blessing to this city? How do we be a blessing? How do we partner? Are they partnered with other?
Or it gets no recognition. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we heard that from a friend that
you won't even know. Some churches you don't even know. They don't put their brand on it.
No, we did that I don't even think we announced it. We didn't even tell the church or anything. We did something for teacher appreciation. We got with the school that's right behind us and we fed all the teachers and we put this whole display for them for Teacher Appreciation Week and all the YMCA members.
Yeah.
And that we host church at.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were like floored by it or whatever, but nobody even knew that we did it.
And Jesus talks about that. Like when you do your things to be seen of men, that's your reward.
Yeah.
And so there has to be this collaborating of what can we do to just enhance and bring a blessing to this community in this area, regardless of, we don't need the recognition. You don't have to throw our logo on it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. That's a healthy church community to be a part of.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, how do they speak of others? How do they speak of others who aren't affiliated with if they speak well, that's the place you want to be around of.
Right.
Because that means if they'll speak well of others who leave, that means they'll speak well of you when you leave. Yeah. If you leave.
If you ever leave. Yeah. Or if you're never around.
Or if you're not around. Because if you ever, we know that quote, if people will talk about people next to you, they'll talk about you when you're not there too.
Yep.
And so how they watch how people who have left speak well. You know what I mean? I love at our church named Danny G. Shout out Danny. He actually just preached for us recently. I love one thing I was telling somebody about Danny. Every church Danny has been a part of, he still speaks well of them and they still love him. Like they still he still has relationship with.
Yeah.
Like regardless, like that, him as an individual is someone where you can trust, worth following. Yeah. He's not, leading a pastor, but in terms of that's the type of product that you want to produce in terms of people who, any place I leave, I'm still spoken well of. And I still speak well of, and if you were to ask them, you can be honest about things, but you know what I'm saying? Like are the pastors and the leaders in the culture, do they speak well of other people that are no longer a part?
Right.
And then, do they, what was the last one? How do they teach? How do they talk and how they treat? Mm-hmm. What would you say for a healthy way?
How they treat them. Do they bless people on their way out?
Yes.
Like, do they go out of their way? Is it
always a secret when the staff changes?
Yeah.
Are they trying to keep everything hush?
Yeah. Like I think I had mentioned in the last episode, it was one of the hardest things I ever had to watch was this family who moved clear across state to join this church. Mm-hmm. And they joined the church because their friends were on staff and they were the ones that told them to come. And they had kids and everything. And they moved and they stood there for 7 or 8 months. We got to really get to know them and love on this family. But when this family decided that they just didn't align with the vision of the house anymore, they told their friends first because they were the ones that encourage them to come and talk to them. And immediately I saw that light switch and I saw these staff members immediately just no longer talk to them, no longer want a friendship with them. Didn't even say goodbye to them.
Wow, that's heartbreaking.
Didn't even say, you know what, I understand, it's okay. Like, let me pray with you, or let me like bless you to go help you pack up, or any of that. They had nothing. They had no help. And all because they decided to leave
the church.
And they said that it wasn't the vision anymore. Like, you called those people friends.
You probably called them family.
And they thought that.
Yeah.
But once they were treated that way, and I'll never forget, like, that staff member asked me, and she knew like I didn't agree with what I saw and what I experienced. And I remember she got really offended and upset with me because she took me out to lunch, and I knew her whole agenda of taking me out. And she brought it up, and she's telling me her side of the story of things. But at the end of the day, I was like, but those are still your friends, weren't they?
Yeah.
Why does it matter?
There's never an excuse to treat people poorly who leave a church.
Like, and she got so upset. And I remember seeing her, and she's like, why do you think that that's okay for you to say that to me? And I said, you asked me.
Yeah.
You asked me what I thought.
Wow.
And because you asked me what I thought, I told you what I thought. And maybe you don't got enough people in your life to tell you, but you need more friends. You need more people, because that's not how you treat friends.
And that's the problem. There's not enough Christians telling other Christians that, hey, how you treat people who leave is wrong. That's not godly. Like, we need more. There needs to be more people in churches who identify, wait, why are we not praying out that family? Why are we not blessing? Why are we not sowing into that family? Like, especially people that gave their lives to build that church for however short of a time it was. If you invested your time, your family, your resources into building something, you should be blessed. If it's possible, right?
If it's
like
possible.
You said, some people just dip out. You didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Some people, they leave out in a rage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're trying to be divisive. I get that.
They won't respond to you.
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying, but I'm saying when it comes to people that are saying, hey, we just don't feel like our season is up here. That should, we were at a conference, and Chad Beach says, if someone left my church to plant a church right next door, I would buy their studio. I would buy their sound equipment.
Yeah.
Because I want to be so blessing, and I want people to know, hey, as long as you're following God, like, there is no competition. There's no wrong. Like, you're never wrong for leaving a church. It just might not be the best timing. Yeah. It might not be, you know what I mean? Like, but that's for you and God to figure out.
Yeah.
But it's never that whole thing of, it's scary when we can place institutions over individuals. Like, I can be so married to this institution that I forget that I was called to love individuals. You were never called to love a building. You were never called to love a brand. You were never called to love, you were called to love the people.
Yeah.
And the moment we stop loving people because they no longer align with our brand or our culture, or they no longer, submit to the vision, so what? Who gives a damn about your vision?
Yeah.
These are people.
Yeah.
And if your vision stops you from seeing the vision of God, which is let them be one, then your vision is flawed. Jesus says it like this. He says, if the eyes are cloudy or distorted, then the heart, everything that comes out is going to be polluted because the eyes are out of, like, the vision is out of focus. You know what I mean? Like, your vision, if that's blurry, everything's ruined. And I think the reason that so many millennials and Gen Z are overchurched is because they were a part of people who lost sight of the true vision of God, which was them. And you need clarity. You need clarity to stop. Hey, your church is not the best. Stop isolating yourself in it. Hey, you're called to constantly, the Bible is about the brothers and sisters of the faith is not because they go to the 10:30 a.m. at your church. It's because, they're in a church somewhere. That's your brothers and sisters. If you're speaking poorly of people, I love the example of Paul and I think it was Paul and Mark. They got into a disagreement over a disciple. Yeah. And they just agreed to disagree, and they went separate ways. And neither one of them were wrong. Neither one of them were wrong.
And that's unity.
That was still, they were able to, like, they still, guess what? Both of them still made it into the Bible. Yep. Like, both of them wrote books and letters that still made it into the Bible. Yeah. So they were both good. They just saw a different way of doing it.
Dang, that's so good.
And, like, why can't we do that? Why can't we agree to disagree? Why can't we say, hey, you know what? I love this church. It was good for me for a season, but I feel called to go somewhere else.
Love people Love the individual more than the institution.
You got it.
Love the individual more than the institution.
And that's how we can have healthy churches and have a healthy culture of being able to, if I love you more than I love this building or this, then I can pray for you, love you, rejoice with you, even as I can see you later.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be goodbye.
Yeah.
I would say the last thing is that identifying of how do they treat people is, do the people that no longer come to the church, do they still stay in community with the people who do? Are they still feeling well? You know what I mean? Like, do you still see them at the birthday parties and the showers? And
right.
Are they still invited to those things?
Yeah.
Because that means that's healthy. That's authentic. That means they know how to say goodbye.
And that's exactly what we see in Danny G all the time.
Oh,
Danny goes to all the birthday parties and
everybody from those any church he's been a part of, they still want him.
They still invite him,
and they still and I would say that's good. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I would say the saddest thing. Here's how you can check yourself. Have I cut off anybody that no longer goes to my church?
Yeah.
Go through your phone, go through your social media, go through whatever. If you've cut off people who no longer go to church with you, you might and unintentionally be the reason that they're now overchurched or dechurched.
Yeah.
Jesus says, if any of you causes one of my children to stumble, it's better to tie a millstone around your neck and jump off a cliff into the ocean.
Woo.
How many of us are walking around with, we need, like, how many of us need to be jumping off cliffs instead of jumping on the microphones? And like, we need to be jumping off cliffs because we are breaking the heart of God because we've caused people, people have caused people to be unchurched, dechurched, and overchurched. Yeah. Jesus doesn't.
Yeah.
It's only when people experience something that does not fit the vision of God, when they're cut off from the community when they stop, attending, or when they go to the church next door. It's when they're spoken poorly of because they didn't agree with whatever
right.
It's those people that if they stop they lose their faith in the bride and the body of Christ because of how the bride treated them. I think, man, Judgment Day gonna be rough for you, bruh, or sis.
Yeah,
that's scary. I never want to be the type of person to where people stop following Jesus because of how I treated them when they left my church.
Right. 100%. I think that's just overall. I just hope that this podcast encourages you, gives you hope, and allows you to go back and reflect and get some clarity.
Yeah.
Asking God for some clarity.
Yeah. And for forgiveness. And hey, let's ask people for forgiveness if we've done that. If we've made people feel isolated, if we've made people ignore, if we've done those things, let's repent.
Yeah.
Let's repent.
That's good. Well, we just want to say thank you guys for listening. We can't wait to talk to you guys next week, but go out and love, live, and lead like Jesus.
Love you guys.